release of AMD Ryzen 7 and Ryzen 5, the question really has been if it's worth upgrading. Now, this honestly depends on what your system is. If you're running an FX chip, an upgrade may be long overdue, but if you're running an Intel chip, it's a much more serious question of whether it's worth chalking up all this extra money for Ryzen, which admittedly cost effective in the high core, high thread count market. It's still an 1800X is $500, still on the expensive side for your average consumer. So the question really is how much longevity will you get out of a Ryzen CPU? Now, the first thing we know that points to longevity of a Ryzen CPU is the fact that the AM4 platform is around at least until 2020. This is definitely verified by AMD, and the AM4 platform is really what they're planning to build on for at least the next 3 years. So the investment in a motherboard there really gets you guaranteed 3 years, possibly more, and that is compatibility with all CPUs until that 2020 deadline. Now, in terms of 3 years, that's a pretty decent amount of time to still be able to upgrade to a new CPU. So even if you even if the newest Ryzen, I don't know what they're going to call it by then, but even if the newest AMD CPU in 4 years after the 2020 deadline of AM4 is, uses DDR5 RAM and all that kind of crazy stuff that we're going to see in the future, you still have an AM4 motherboard, so you can upgrade right to the processor below that one that was released in 2020, which is still a pretty valuable upgrade. So I say for the motherboard lifetime, that's pretty decent overall. In terms of CPU longevity, right now, strictly in terms of gaming, we're not seeing games really take advantage of all of those cores and threads that Ryzen brings to the table. They much prefer Intel's high clock speeds and high IPCs from their Kaby Lake series of chips, specifically the 7700K and the 7600K, which have phenomenal gaming performance. Now, Ryzen is a great gaming performer, don't get me wrong, and I disagree with all those people who are freaking out saying Ryzen sucks at 1080p gaming. It's just blatantly false. It's an incredible improvement over the FX series, and it still provides an amazing gaming experience. And I think you also have to take into account the fact that it has such content creation power. That's aside from the fact. Newer APIs are going to be using more cores and more threads. Think about it this way. Right now, we're driving most of our games off a single thread, but with CPU cores becoming so much more available, with Ryzen, you can get an 8-core 16-thread processor for $400, $1,700. With these cores and threads becoming more available, it only makes sense that the newer APIs, specifically DirectX 12 and Vulkan, will be taking more advantage of these CPUs and threads. This will further gaming performance, and it's just a win-win. Now, the reason that we haven't seen this happen already is because those are two very new APIs, and in some cases, not very common cases, but there have been performance drops when using games. The example I've heard of is in Battlefield 1. Some people have pretty good performance in DX11, switch it to DXL, and experience a lower performance. So they're really shaky right now, and they're not going to give you better performance 100% of the time. However, as new games release, better optimization occurs, the APIs become more fleshed out. I'm pretty sure that there's going to be a reason to have those more cores, and Ryzen's lower clock speeds may become evened out in the future when we're able to viably use 8 cores in a game. Now, that's just going to be amazing. I'm not saying that's going to happen soon, but the fact that AM4 is lasting until 2020 does point to the fact that you will have a bit of time to let games start to use up these more cores. So that's the other reason I think Ryzen will be I think it will be a pretty good investment in terms of the amount of time and use you'll be able to get out of it. Other than that, I think DDR4 RAM has been around for a while now, and it's much faster than DDR3, obviously. But AM4 probably won't be compatible with DDR5. I'm saying like I'm saying, it very, very, very probably won't be, unless some miracle happens and there's like some magical BIOS revision that allows all these old AM4 motherboards to get to DDR5. That's besides the point. But DDR4 is a valid investment, and right now Ryzen is having some issues with certain RAM speeds, but I think faster RAM is always something that is worth the upgrade. And I think in general the AM4 platform brings a lot to the table, and given it's not going to reach its expiration date until 2020, and it's just going to be, you're going to have 3 years with this motherboard where you can viably upgrade to a new CPU. I just think that's a really good investment. And I think Ryzen itself is a really good investment because it brings a lot of performance to the table now, and I think its gaming performance will only improve as games start to take advantage of more cores and threads. So that was just a quick, those are just my quick thoughts on whether you should invest in Ryzen, because I know it still is a considerable chunk of money, even though it's not a lot of money compared to Intel's high core count offerings. It's still quite a bit of money. And I would just say, just to recap, that I think it is a pretty good investment. However, if you guys have a different opinion, make sure to leave a comment. If you like this video, if you want to stay tuned for more tech news and gaming content, be sure to get subscribed. Just hit 250 subscribers, quarter of the way to 1,000. So that's pretty crazy. And yeah, that's going to be it for this video. Peace out, guys.